The moment the assaults failed, the battlefield changed character. There were no more sweeping advances across open ground, no more lines surging uphill under flags. Instead, the earth itself became the weapon. The distance between the two armies, once measured in fields and ridges, began to shrink by yards, then by feet, then by the length of a man's lying prone with a rifle. Grant did not pull back, he leaned in. Union soldiers took up shovels as often as rifles. Lines of trenches began to snake forward across the terrain, carved into the soil under constant threat of fire. Each night they pushed a little closer. Each morning the Confederate defenders looked out from their works and saw the enemy nearer than before. The ground between them disappeared. Confederate forces answered in kind. Their own trenches deepened, reinforced with logs, earth, anything that could absorb impact. Sharpshooters settled into positions where they could watch every movement. Any exposed figure, any flicker of motion drew fire. It became a war of inches. Artillery never stopped. Union guns, positioned methodically, began to pound specific sections of the Confederate line. Not randomly, but with purpose. Day after day, the same positions were hit, weakening the earthworks, shaking the men inside them, denying rest. Inside Vicksburg, the effect spread beyond the soldiers. The city itself had to adapt or be destroyed. Civilians began digging into the hillsides. Caves appeared along the slopes, crude shelters cut into clay, reinforced with whatever materials could be found. Families moved underground. Life continued in darkness, punctuated by the constant tremor of bombardment above. Every explosion carried through the earth. Food began to tighten. At first, rations were reduced, then substitutes appeared. Horses, mules, anything that could be consumed was used. The siege did not announce hunger all at once. It crept in slowly until it was everywhere. Soldiers felt it in their movements, in the way their bodies lagged behind commands. Civilians felt it in silence, meals that grew smaller, then uncertain. Outside the city, Grant's lines grew stronger. Supply lines, once a vulnerability, were now re-established across the river. The Union Army was no longer operating on risk. It was anchored, fed, reinforced. Every day the siege continued, the balance shifted further. Grant's strategy was no longer about breaking the line. It was about making the line irrelevant. Then came the mines. Union engineers identified a section of the Confederate defenses where the terrain allowed approach under cover. Instead of advancing over the ground, they began to go under it. Tunnels were dug, slowly, carefully, through packed earth supported by timber, extending toward the base of the enemy fortifications. The work was suffocating. Air thinned as the tunnels deepened. The sound of digging had to be controlled, masked, hidden from ears above that might detect the approach.
At the end of one such tunnel, explosives were placed. On June 25th, the ground erupted. The explosion tore open a section of the Confederate line, throwing earth, debris, and men into the air. For a moment, the defensive wall was not a wall, it was a shattered gap. Union troops surged forward immediately, rushing into the crater, but the breach did not behave like open ground. It became a pit, steep, unstable, exposed on all sides. Confederate soldiers recovered quickly, regrouping along the edges, firing down into the crater. The attackers, compressed into the space they had created, found themselves trapped under converging fire. The fight did not spread, it involved inward. Grenades, artillery shells with fuses were thrown back and forth into the crater. Smoke, dirt, and bodies filled the space. The attempt to turn explosion into breakthrough failed. The line, though damaged, held.
Grant did not abandon the tactic. More tunnels were planned, more charges prepared. The pressure remained constant, not a single decisive act, but a series of controlled, grinding actions designed to wear the defense down. Inside Vicksburg, time had begun to distort. Days were marked not by movement, but by endurance. The sound of digging below, the impact of shells above, the tightening scarcity of food, these became the rhythm of life. Soldiers remained in their trenches, exposed to heat, disease, and fatigue. Civilians remained in their caves, waiting for the bombardment to pause long enough to emerge. But the bombardment never truly stopped. Pemberton's position narrowed with each passing day. He could not break out. The Union lines were too close, too entrenched. He could not expect relief. Grant had already cut the connections that might have brought help. Every option required movement, and movement had been taken away. The city was no longer being attacked, it was being consumed. Union trenches edged closer, sometimes within yards of the Confederate works. In places, voices could be heard across the lines. The war had compressed into proximity, two forces facing each other across narrow gaps, both aware that the end was approaching, but neither yet yielding. Grant maintained the pressure without interruption. No grand charge, no pause, no relief. Just the steady closing of distance and the slow collapse of everything inside the lines.